The A-10 Warthog retirement is a nightmare for the U.S. military. It's kind of a long article. Basically, this year, 42 of them are supposed to be retired, and then in the coming years, the remaining 260. Yeah. Obviously, the A-10, purpose-built cast airframe, and really the main point of the article is, save the A-10. I get it. Got a lot of hours on it. Yeah. It's been around for what, Skid? Pushing 50 years now.
Late 70s.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's about me. So pushing 50 years now. But really the threat is and correct me if I'm wrong, man, but the A-10 community is the air to ground SME. Like they're the ones with the corporate knowledge, all of the tactics, the smarts on how to support troops on the ground. And so if you know a little bit of history of the Air Force and the Army, that was kind of the deal, right?
Correct. Remember in 47,
that's right.
We had the Key West Agreement. Are you familiar with the Key West Agreement?
They mentioned it in this article.
Army and Air Force. And so what the Air Force is doing now is they're reneging on that contract. And so that's where you hear a lot of people asking, will the Army get the A-10? Or the Marines get the A-10, which is, I don't think that's feasible because of the way the Army operates and the doctrine. I think they do okay, but not having the Air Force mentality and philosophies. But
so this is kind of what the article gets to. If we retire the A-10, and the big Air Force's arguments like, it can't survive in the modern battlefield. Well, in every single conflict it's been in, it has done well. And the real threat is like you're talking about it, Skid. Okay, we get rid of the A-10, all the A-10 pilots, their schoolhouse gets stood down. They go fly other things, and the knowledge is gone as far as how do you effectively take a incredible fixed wing aircraft and effectively support ground troops. And you mentioned the Army. If it goes to the Army, just sitting here spitballing, they're probably gonna be like, oh, it's kind of like an Apache that's faster, right? Right. I could see, but they don't have the corporate knowledge. So I guess my question to you, man, being an A-10 guy, after reading that article, what do you think is going to happen to the corporate knowledge of air to ground warfare? And how is that, in your opinion, how's that void going to be filled?
It's going to be difficult. You're going to rely on F-35s, some Viper units out there to hold up the cast. The big problem I see is they don't have CSAR. They're not talking about CSAR at all. Who's going to do CSAR? But you're basically, hey, you're telling the Army, hey, we're not going to support you with dedicated close air support unless it's above for a Strike Eagle at 20,000 feet, dropping a bomb from, 10 miles away, which might not work in a traditional, CAS, troops in contact, Russians or whoever you're fighting, no kidding. You're within one click fighting each other, a traditional land, air, ground, land battle situation. So perfect example is Ukraine right now. And you can see that the Su-25s are not doing well, correct?
Yeah.
They're getting their butts hit because it's all about, like when I was in Europe back in the late 80s, early 90s in the Hog, our threat was the Soviet Union, the Warsaw Pact, the tanks, SA-8, ZSU-23-4s, MANPADS, of course. And our whole life way to live was stay low, terrain mass, pop to acquire a target, shoot your Maverick missile or you shoot your gun, destroy armor, and suppress and stop the advancement of those vehicles into Western Europe. So you're basically going to trade this out for, stealth. Okay, the F-35's got stealth capabilities. Supposedly after day 3, you can, when you have all the radars down, you could hang bombs on the F-35 and do more traditional CAS, but I just don't see it happening very well. So the Army, of course, is very good now with their Apaches and other assets they have to fight their war because they know the Air Force might not be there for them. So, we're going to give them the best support we can, but getting rid of the A-10, I think it's a big mistake. Maybe you should cut the fleet in half. It's very cheap to operate. Keep at least a core that you can support, maybe obviously Korea for the 25th FS at Korea at Osan, and keep one other squadron or 2 other squadrons so you can rotate a little bit. But getting rid of the whole program is just dumb.
What in the Air Force? What does CSAR mean?
Combat Search and Rescue. So it's basically when one of our bros or sisters get shot down, we're gonna fly Combat Search and Rescue utilizing the A-10 right now, of course, with multiple other assets, tankers, Strike Eagles, other assets to helos to go rescue that pilot and bring them out safe. And the A-10 is a perfect CSAR platform because we're armor plated. We got the big gun. We got lots of fuel. We got staying power, and we can help rescue that pilot and get him out of there. Kind of like the A-1 Skyraider in Vietnam.
Yep.
What it did and the like there. You're giving up that capability. So that's the only problem I see is they're not thinking about who's going to pick up the CSAR mission and be in charge of it. Now you got A-10 guys that are going into the F-35. Okay, great, but they're not allowing them to use the F-35 in A-10 capacity because they're about F-35. That's all they are. They're about F-35 tactics. So I see it as a problem. And until something happens, when we get caught with our pants down and guys get hurt or worse, then you're in trouble. And it'll be like, whoa, why did we do this? So my take on it is, I keep the A-10 around in some fashion, but it's a moot point now. But we'll see what happens.
Skid, how does that compare to the capability of an AC-130?
Gunship is good for certain, obviously in a reduced threat environment when you can orbit the target area, and you don't worry about man pads or AAA. We have impunity. They can orbit the target area, and that's good for point targets. I think we lost one in Desert Storm, correct? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had one get shot. We had one get shot down because what happened was they stayed past their vol time for into the early morning when they could be seen, and the Iraqis got them, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a special ops airplane. And maybe some people have thought about putting the A-10 in special ops because it's, you got the NVGs, you got targeting pod, you got a lot of cool stuff. Put it into the make it a smaller mission, put it into special ops. Keep that. That would be, I think, really critical to do. This is me.
Yeah, I think people who say the F-35 can replace the A-10 and in the air to ground role have never done CAS in a fast jet. I mean, Mover, you've done a lot of CAS in the F-16. We've done it together in the Hornet. It's challenging because of the speeds, right? I mean, the F-16 is not built to, or the Hornet's not built to hang out, down low. And Pig, another A-10 brother of ours, tells a great story of, he was supporting troops in contact in the A-10, and they were running out of ammo, and these F-16s came in to relieve them, and they were like, "Hey, how's the weather?" And Pig said, "Clearing a million below 3,000 feet." The Vipers were like, "Yeah, we can't." And it's like, it's because of the speed, man. Speed is good until it's not good, right? So I think the performance and the fact that another thing that used to kind of crush us in the Hornet was loadout and time on station. A-10, right? Turbofan engines, no afterburner, stay on station a long time, carry a great weapon load, had a lot of rounds in the gun. Every round of the gun had a lot more firepower than every round in the 20 millimeter and the F-16 and the Hornet. So, we check in. Okay, we got an hour 15 of play time. I've got 500 rounds of 20 mag mic, and I've got 2 GBU whatevers, and they're like, what am I gonna do with that? So there's a lot, and the F-35 is even less, just to some degree, right? Especially if they're playing the whole stealth game, everything's internal, right? But I don't know, man. The airplane, there's a gap, and in my mind, the article brings up about just losing the knowledge, and that's a lot, because that is knowledge that has taken decades to refine, and perfect, and I think that would be, somebody needs to really take a look at that. Kind of like you mentioned, Skid, like try to keep it alive in the F-35 community or something. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Mover?
You in the past brought up a point that I think is very relevant, which is in an effort to cut costs and have a Swiss Army knife airplane, we have created a lack of expertise. We need the A-10 the F-15, like we need people that are specialists in certain areas so that we can call upon them to be experts in their field.
Mhm.
You know, we
Yep.
need that because we need that corporate knowledge.